what's the thing in your life that was the hardest to do to deconstruct after the event so that it didn't consume you emotionally from the initial terror? Because you study this, you practice this, you teach this stuff, but when, as the practitioner teaching it, was there a time where you were like, man, this is really hard for me to understand?
Oh, absolutely. It's chronic. I mean, that state is chronic for me at the moment, I would say, partly because I've become so insanely famous. And I have difficulty with that for sure. It's very difficult to understand. And I wouldn't say I've managed it. I'm managing it, I suppose. And then health trouble that has hit my family and me, it's been so devastating that I haven't managed that either. Like, that's the thing. I suggest to people, no, that isn't even that. It's that, what have I found that you do about terrible things? Generally, you don't run from them. Especially if they're not avoidable in the future. Generally, you stand, confront, decompose, understand, adapt. But just because you generally do that and it's the best bet doesn't mean it's definitely going to work. It's just the best shot you have at it. It'd be lovely if something always worked, but if something always worked, people would never get sick and die. Right? And we do all the time. So we do our best, but that doesn't mean that always works, but it's still the best that can be done. Yeah. It's still better than all the alternatives. So
how do you cultivate your own personal inner peace amongst the different changes that have come up, whether, the fame, the health challenges, personally, maybe challenges with family or friends? How do you personally keep a level of inner peace amongst the chaos?
I walk a lot. I exercise a lot. Like, I'm walking about 7 miles a day now and working out as well. And that's necessary. I take solace.
If you didn't walk and work out, where do you think you would be?
Dead.
Really?
Definitely. Yes, definitely.
Is that physically because you wouldn't be physically taking care of your body, or because mentally and emotionally your peace would be chaotic and it would drive you to die?
That.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that you were saying, sorry, I was interrupting you. Solace,
peace, that comes to you if you're fortunate. And sometimes it doesn't come. I try to do things that I think are worthwhile, that seem worthwhile, and that gives me solace, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I'm writing, I'm talking to people who I find interesting about things that I think are crucially important. I'm trying to learn and to communicate as a consequence of talking to these people. I'm trying to do what I can for my family and my friends, and to do what I can beyond that as well in a variety of different ways. Those are all useful endeavors, and they keep me going.
What have you found to be the best practices of managing mass attention, whether you want to call it fame, mass attention, mass audience, people being fanatical about your message, your work, you as an individual?
Luckily, that hasn't happened too much, the fanatical side of things. I've had the odd brush with people who were a little more persistent than was probably good. And, I could see lurking signs of mental health issues behind that. But fortunately, very little of that has happened. And that's certainly all for the good.
It's because you're not living in LA. That's probably why.
Well, could be. but for whatever reason, I've been pretty fortunate about that.
Yeah.
I talk over what I'm doing with the people around me all the time and try to keep it on the proper pathway to the degree that I'm able to do that. And to see if what I'm doing is justifiable and ethical. And we're all terrified of this, to a degree that is very difficult to communicate. We live in a time where if you make a mistake, you can be shredded. And I would say to some degree, the more visible you are, the more thorough the shredding.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And so the cost of an error, an ethical error, is unbelievably high. The cost of the appearance of an ethical error is extremely high, much less the cost of an actual ethical error. And so we're very careful to try to act ethically in every manner possible, appearance and reality.
Because everything's being watched. Yeah.
Well, and I have no idea how any of this looks from the outside, but my reputation has been on the line publicly many, many times. And partly, sometimes outright accusations, sometimes as a consequence of things I hypothetically said, sometimes as a consequence of newspaper articles that, have taken a particular twist. And God only knows how many times a consequence of my own inadequacies and errors. But every time that rises up as an issue, there's a 2-week period where no one in my family knows if this is the time that it's just going to go to hell.
Really? Where it's all crumbles.
Absolutely. Sure. Look at how many people it happens to. And look how people respond, man. It doesn't take a very big Twitter mob to chase anyone back into their hole